welcome Marika Malaea to the podcast. Welcome,
Hello.
welcome, sweetie. So nice to finally have you here. I think you started working with me before I even had a podcast, right?
Correct. Well, maybe right around the time that you started, I felt like.
Okay, it
Mhm.
was somewhere around there. I've been wanting to have you on, and we've had so many issues from the gods and goddesses, and it's automatic nervous systems.
Right. I was gonna
There's so
say
many
also
people.
my nervous system.
So tell us a little bit about you. Most people that heard the past episode with you and Camille have a little idea, but if they haven't, how do you want to introduce yourself?
Gosh, how do I want to introduce myself? I guess I live in the Pacific Northwest, which I love. This is where I grew up,
Hmm.
in a little town called Gig Harbor, Washington. It's like an hour from Seattle. My parents still live there. I was adopted when I was like 3 days old, so very, very young. From a white family, which led to a lot of learning for the last 46 years, and unlearning. Just been
Hmm.
great with this
Hmm.
work. And so yeah, I'm writer, mother. My son's 23, almost
Hmm.
24, which seems like a human age, like an adult
Hmm.
human.
Like you have a real human in the world. Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, right? So I know, especially when all my friends started having kids, 15 years later or something. So he was
Yeah, you
kind of
started
the
early. You
yeah,
got
I
started
was
before us.
20, 21.
Nice.
But that meant I was also done before everyone. So
That's what I'm thinking right now.
I know I was gonna say I get to live my best 40s. Some
Hmm.
people are changing diapers.
That's very. I have friends at 46 having their first baby. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Just an
amazing.
adventure of a lifetime, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, that's I live with my husband and my in-laws, and just being reintroduced to the world of the suburbs, which apparently is a thought I wouldn't like, and I've just loved it.
Oh, nice. Wait, so were you living in the city before?
Correct. Well, we were in West Seattle, but yeah,
Oh, I didn't realize that. I always thought you were like a
we were
little
like
silly outside of Seattle.
yeah, just like 15 minutes probably from yeah. And so we after the pandemic, it was like the reason we moved to where we were at was because we were within walking distance of everything and
Hmm.
life and restaurants and bars and people, and then it just didn't seem like with the pandemic and everything, it seemed like we needed a little bit more quiet.
Hmm.
I needed trees.
One of my favorite things to talk about with people on the podcast is just I like to hear their language and their lens of this work and how it applies to them. And I mean, you're with me every time I teach, or mostly every time I do a webinar, and you're in the membership. So I mean, you do this work as much as I do in terms of the actual sessions and teaching with people.
Right.
I'm just so curious. And actually, before I go there, I just have to say about the title that we came up with yesterday for this for the for this episode. Do you want to say
Right.
it?
We kept having to push this out. And then finally yesterday I got up early. I put my face on, all the makeup in the world that would, keep me from realizing I was on a podcast. But yeah. And I felt like I was all ready and everything, and then we had a snag, and so we couldn't. So I was like, well, here I am. So we were going to call it Triggered but Beautiful.
Absolutely. So this episode is titled "Triggered but Beautiful," which is actually a really good one because you never look not beautiful, not healthy. Like there's so many
Thank
times
you.
you'll say to me, I was so triggered, I was so terrified about that. I'm like, you were? You have a really good poker
A
face.
good freeze face.
Oh,
Yeah.
you have a good freeze, and you're blessed with a good freeze face. But
Mhm.
I guess I'm curious. I'm going to start by asking you, being adopted is one thing, right?
Mhm.
Being adopted into a completely different culture is another thing.
Mhm.
People that aren't seeing you right now, you're a woman of color. What's it like? I don't know if you even identify that term, but tell me, for you, what have you learned through this work around your adoption story or your upbringing?
I think what I learned the most was I think I've been in freeze since the beginning. I didn't really ever think about what it was like being being sort of a child of the thing that I think that adopted people have in common is you're born into sort of someone who I think is probably in the grief cycle, or it's often a heartbreaking thing. And then you pivot really quick if you're lucky, I guess lucky in a certain way. And you're somebody else's miracle, you know. And so
Mhm.
I do wonder what it's like, because we, as a mother, I know how um I know how connected, I felt to my own child. So I don't really know what that break feels like, from that side. But I can only imagine like how hard it was for my own mother, my biological mom, and then being raised in this family of people who couldn't have children. So it was like a, I don't think they use the word blessing, but something like that. So something they were grateful for. And so yeah, it's been a lifelong learning about like intergenerational trauma, and that type of bathing. And you were the first one who sort of gave me that visual of sort of bathing in, before you're born, you know in whatever's going on in your mom.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that made me have a lot more questions. I didn't have a lot of questions growing up, about being adopted, because I was just trying to assimilate. I
Yeah.
just wanted to be part of things and to belong to stuff and look like Cinderella, which
Mm.
was not gonna happen. you
Hmm.
know and but still really wanting that,
Of course.
straightening the hair and doing all the, you
Yeah, I
you, you
do.
know
I straightened my hair for like 4 years.
Oh yeah. And after, 20 years of straightening my hair, I did not turn out white. I was not a blonde. I did not have blue eyes. I
Did
did
not
not,
change your genetics
I
at
don't
all.
even, I don't even have the body of like the, typical, what growing up, what we were supposed to look like,
Hmm.
And so I think that's sort of the journey I've been on in the last few years, is really trying to dive deeper into those places that, um, I didn't even think to go,
Hmm. Yeah.
before. Which this work has been so good for me in that way, because I can ask questions and do the self inquiry, Byron Katie stuff without judgment,
Yeah.
which I think
Yeah.
has been really key for me, is just looking at things the way that they are, seeing how I actually feel, how I felt.
Hmm.
I think the repair part is where I'm at and I'm getting to,
I
you
think that's
know.
what I love about what we're talking about here, the adoption experience. I love how you said you're one situation, it's a grief, it's a rupture. Another situation, it's like a repair and it's like a miracle or a blessing. And
Yeah.
for people listening that don't really understand what we mean by that, there's this experience that happens when a fetus is growing inside of someone's body. And when that's happening, that person's experience is carrying the child or the fetus, whatever people want to call it. There's this, like when you said bathing, the fetus is literally being bathed in whatever hormonal experience that person's having. So you're thinking of, your biological mother, and the pain, the fear, the shame, whatever it is when you're either hiding a baby or adopting, giving one up for adoption, and your little body is being flooded with those hormones. And so what's interesting about that is when we're born, that's like a pre-verbal, like womb trauma, it's called. So
Hmm.
you don't even know, you don't have content for it or context. It's not a memory, it's like a felt sense. Did you have that felt sense growing up, even though you were in a family that was really nurturing and loving? Like, or did that wash away quickly?
No, I think I've always had it.
What was it like? Like, what did it feel like?
Well, it didn't, because I didn't feel things,
Mm,
you know,
mm-hmm,
which is, I think, a very protective, thing that the body does. But I I distinctly remember if people would bring up being adopted, or um, it was through a perspective I wasn't really into. It was always like, "You're so lucky," and I didn't. They were just my parents, you know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Like, of course, when you're a kid, you don't go walk around going like, "I'm so lucky to
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
just they're great parents. Um, but I do think, looking back, I can see how I did not enjoy being in my body. And I don't know how much of that was attached to, you know, having this given away, or just not ever feeling like I was in a home space, because it's very different to go from American Samoa to Washington State.
Yeah, and you were actually you're
Right.
born in Samoa.
Correct. And then my parents lived there for a couple of years after
Mm.
that. So we
Oh
got to be
wow.
on the land, and I got to, I have pictures from my first birthday party, which my biological family, was at. And um,
Oh wow. So they actually had a relationship to your biological family in that extent.
yeah, somewhat. And yeah, and then we moved. So I never thought, before I met you, I never thought about the land that I was from and what that might mean,
Yeah.
you know. But I am so drawn to, just the water and the ocean, and it's definitely the place that I can go to regulate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I love
It
that.
feels like it's a being
Hmm.
or something that's there to support
Yeah.
me. So that's something that I at least brought with me.
Yeah. Well, for people who are listening around that experience of not really ever feeling your body because of so much, discomfort in there, what are some things that you've been learning or applying or discovering that have helped you feel into your body? What do you employ? What does that look like?
Some of the exercises that we've done in the course, finding the safety, that was something I'd never thought to look for. Because it seems like it's something that happens to you,
Yes.
not something that you can encourage
Mm.
or ferret out, in some way. And I realized that all the times that I can look back when I was unconsciously didn't understand this work, but I was in my body, they were all incredibly painful,
Mm.
experiences that I did not want to be in,
Hmm.
you know. And so, yeah, I understand why I did. I don't know if it was an overcoupling, but I understand why I did not like getting back into my body at any moment, right? Because all the examples and the evidence that I had was that it's not my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I've done since then is just and adopting language for what it is that I'm feeling, and um, fostering relationships with people where I can talk about that stuff, and talk about how I'm feeling rather than what I'm what I think I'm feeling,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, or just being we're in such a, thank you to the collective trauma of the pandemic, we're in a very, like, everyone's very pro therapy lately,
Mm-hmm.
at least that I've seen. And that was one thing that came out of the pandemic that I was really happy about, was so many
Hmm.
people that I know have jumped into some kind of inner work. And so it feels a little bit safer to share those things with people,
I noticed that
now.
too. Like
Mhm.
being paused and having to be at home for so many
Mhm.
months, people are like, I have trauma. I have
Right.
there's something here that I've been working away from and now I can't work. I'm
Exactly.
stuck here.
Right. On top of we're being traumatized.
On top of actual collective traumatic
Just like a
experiences.
trauma cake. And
It's
I love cake. So
how
yeah.
many layers? How many
Um,
layers is it?
I don't know, 100. You know? um, yeah, no, I absolutely. I thought I would like being in my body after I figured out how to, and that was like the biggest joke of
Mm.
all. Like, I'm funny, but that was funnier.
I think
Like,
that's important for people to hear because we think we have that whole thing about like become embodied, be mindful, feel settle into yourself.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean you feel
yeah.
pleasant
None
when
of
you're
those
minded.
quotes say because you're gonna feel good about it.
Yeah, exactly.
None of it ends
Exactly.
with a party.
Yeah.
It just it for me, it lets me live more authentically, and for me that means being my actual self,
Mm-hmm.
or and being curious about, if I'm showing up authentically to things,
Mm-hmm.
which half the time is not wanting to show up at all.
Yeah.
But understanding that that's okay,
See,
you
that's
know.
important when you say it lets you live authentically, because some people might think, well, what does that mean? And you
Right.
know, like when I hear you say that, I think of when we do our programs and our sessions, and I always say,
Mhm.
let's settle into our body. And remember, settling in doesn't mean feeling good. We're just seeing what's there. If
Mhm.
you're settling in, you notice, ooh, there's some pain here. That's authentic. You know, if
Mhm.
there's joy, that's authentic. I think what's profound is how culturally and habitually we literally live in such a way that keeps us from feeling what is authentic inside of us. Like you just said, what's usually authentic is you don't want to do the thing you're doing. So how are
And
you finding that
correct.
shifting? Like, what does that look like for you?
I mean, honestly, it's acknowledging negative things and a no, saying no. I didn't realize how much of my whole life had been fawning,
Oh yeah, yeah,
uh, in really sneaky ways sometimes too. Like it would be like, I look back at it, I'm like, oh, you just gaslit yourself for like years. You
yeah.
know, you
That's
don't feel
amazing.
that way. No, you shouldn't feel that way. We don't feel that way.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
and
right.
then I
That's
would
right.
go, yes, 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 yeah, just
Yeah,
sure, sure, no problem. Oh God, why do I say that so much? Sure,
yeah,
no problem.
yeah.
Sometimes it's a problem.
I think whenever we say no problem out loud, that means it's probably a problem, right? Or
Right.
else
Yeah.
why
I
would you
mean,
say it?
yeah. Or it's just reflexive. Like I just have
Right,
this
right.
reflex. I have a reflexive yes, and the authentic person in me sometimes needs to say no.
Yeah.
And am I okay with people being disappointed? That's the difference now for me as well. Yes. It's not that I love it though. Of course I don't want to
Mhm.
disappoint people. Of course I don't want to make people angry or uncomfortable but I think living from the perspective of um, I'm never going to cause negative ripples in the world
Yes.
ever. That was not that
Yes.
was not real.
I think that's been the most profound thing for me as my work has become more public is learning that I'm going to just offend and trigger and create perceptions in people's minds I have no control over. And can I be at peace with that? And
Mhm.
for me, I wasn't at peace with it for years. And so I wasn't open to even having a social media page. And
Right.
then I really had to build capacity for that disappointment.
Well, you have to build so much capacity for social media. I mean, this is where you and I met
Yeah,
was
right, right.
was over. Well, I don't know that we met over social media, but
We met through it.
right. And it was
So
for your music page,
yeah,
and which is a little bit kinder because like people either love your music or not, right? It's
that's
it's
right.
not people are fans or not fans. With somatic work, you're working with so many different individual bodies that
Hmm.
are going to react to, whatever it is. I've had not a lot, but I've had people reach out about you.
Hmm.
Why does he do this? Why does he have the things on his face? Does he,
Hmm.
is he white? Like, because then they want to determine whether you can wear that thing on your head. They want to determine
Right.
whether you can speak, like there's so many different ways that we can be perceived. And
How do you handle those questions? I'm curious. Because I don't like the beauty of you is I don't have to see those anymore.
I was gonna say,
Unless someone DMs me, I just don't see those. So how do
I
you
need to
handle
start making memes to just send people.
that? What would the meme say or be?
Right? No, I mean, the meme would just be a mirror.
I
Like, welcome to the work.
love it.
Usually I just, with kindness and just curiosity or whatever. Like often if I'm annoyed by it, I will just end it with a question.
Oh, nice. I love that.
Just so I can also be curious rather than just be
Yeah,
like, oh, this person.
good for you.
Because what I don't want is to take other people's you know negative or whatever energy with me throughout the day. I can do that on
Yes.
my own.
You can do it on your own. Right,
I can
right.
I can I can make or break my own day, so I don't need other people to so that has been a good thing, being your line of defense, email line of defense. In that I don't take things as personally anymore, and I don't assume everybody else does too. And if they do, that's them.
Yeah.
That's their thing.
What about me triggers people the most, would you say? If you think in your mind of all the things you've gotten.
I got a lot of people I don't know if I should say that. Well, okay, I'm just gonna say it. A lot of people being like, why does he love Trump? because like one time or one or two times you used it as him as an
Oh,
example.
right,
You know,
right.
remember we were talking about that Byron Katie like
Yes.
video about Trump and how, you know, and it was just a
Yeah.
very interesting pivot for me, at least, in how to look at a person like him. I don't know
Mm.
anybody like him in my personal life, which is yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was just I had a lot of people who assumed, you know, because you didn't use him in the right, you know, in their minds are
Hmm.
like there's the only one way you can use him an example,
Right, right, right.
and none of that can have humanity, you know.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And just for context, people listening, 'cause I like the idea of like Luis loving Trump, you know, and,
Yeah.
and where that might go in people's heads right now. And
Mhm.
what you just said was humanity.
Mhm.
Oh gosh, there's this quote. I'm trying to think who it was. I I can't remember the exact how it exactly goes, but it essentially means um hmm, I'm not going to say it 'cause I'm not going to say it right. I'm going to lose it. But it's that thing of, do I attune and become the very thing that I want to shift, right?
Exactly.
So if
Well,
I'm
and I
hating
felt, and I
Trump,
had the same thing for me, though. I see it happen in the courses, and it happened for me as well, which is started looking at myself through this new lens, right? Somatic lens, which gave me so much grace, right?
hmm
And a lot more runway than I used to give myself before I'd start beating myself up, you
hmm
know. And and then I see, you know, and so many people are in the course because of their mom, their dad, their, you know, generational trauma, like their kids, their, you know, it's a relational, like a relation problem, not
hmm
problem, but like issues
hmm
that they're having. So they start seeing themselves through that same perspective, and then they start attuning and seeing their family members like that. They start seeing the people who hurt them, you know, through this lens.
That's
Like, it
right.
doesn't give abuse or anything, you know, like a pass, not like that, but it's just, if I am, if this is the way that I'm triggered, other people are also triggered. If this is the way I was
Mm-hmm.
raised, those people were probably raised in a certain way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems like it can ripple out a little bit in that way. Again, not to say that, you know, not to give abuse or any of that type of thing a pass, but just to understand that it's more than just that one thing.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's what I love because you don't, there's difference between judgment and like having a boundary. I can say, the way you talk to me doesn't work for me. I'm not going to hang out with you. I don't then have to hate you or have a judgment about you to hold that up. I can just say, love you as a person, don't want to be in a room with you. And I think what I love about this reflective work is, when Trump became president, I don't think I've ever talked about Trump once on this podcast. That's how much I love him. When he when he became the president, the first thing I did was think, where am I like him? And that became my ongoing practice for his entire 4 years of presidency. Where do I do that? Where do I do that? And it was everywhere. There was somewhere in my life that did the same thing he did on a different level. And it just helped me not have this dopamine hit of like what April Harder talks about, like that
Yeah.
narcissism, that thing of, I'm gonna just focus on why he's evil and what's wrong with him so I can feel a little distance from that sense of myself. I'd rather not. So I wonder, this is why I like you so much. That's why I think we became friends so easily, because you're someone that's not easily offended. You don't hold on to identity very, very close. Like, how did you, what's that about? Like, how did your life take you to that place of being so kind of open and curious?
Well, I think, I mean, to be honest, I think it's probably from being the opposite for and seeing where that got me, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
because I think that, well, I keep saying I think, it, looking back, a lot of it was, a lot of my life was fawning and wanting to belong to something, and then sort of like never finding it. And, you know, the myth of self sabotage, like I was just like the self sabotage queen. You know, and the closer I've gotten to what feels like really me, you know, it's sort of an unapologetic me, like that's things have just gotten more in aligned, have gotten more aligned. And it's a lot easier for me to be curious about somebody that everybody hates, mostly because what I find happened, because I did not come to this work until, I don't know, year 4 of his presidency. And that was after 3 years of freaking out on Facebook with
Mm-hmm.
everybody else
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just doing nothing. Like it
Yeah.
was like the loop. And I realized it was like the 3 years of re-traumatizing ourselves over and over and over again with the same posts, and
Yeah.
reading the same posts and seeing the freaking out about what was going to happen in a real, in a real and unreal ways. And so once I saw people on, and I'm going to say this, but it's not how I feel now,
Mhm.
my side, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Once people
Yeah.
on my side were displaying the same kind of dehumanizing of the other side,
Yeah.
then I just sort of saw how we were all just the same.
Mm.
Obviously, that to me, I have a little bit of issues here when it comes to like, human rights and, like and the rights of women and and people of color and stuff. But I also realized I was just attuning to the stuff that hadn't yet happened. It
Mm.
was either stuff from the
Mhm.
past, which was evidence to me,
Yeah.
which was evidence to me that this was going to happen again. And then I was living in this, it's already happening,
Yeah.
and not in the present where it wasn't happening. And I could actually be doing stuff. I could be voting, I could be donating, I could be like,
Yeah.
grassroots organizing. But instead I was just freaking out about the future.
I love that. So you were literally freezing out of as a result of orienting toward this essentially expected painful thing that was about to happen.
Right. Which to me, it was going to happen to everyone. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and I think there's a lot of people who are still in that, who still live from that every day,
Yeah.
and
Well, it
those
never
people,
ends.
well, and it
Like,
never ends.
does it? I mean, if you think of your life before Trump, there's always something to attune to that's going to be painful. That's kind of a guarantee, isn't it?
Right. One thing that I hoped that his presidency brought was sort of illustrating how much of this is just part of a system that isn't, at
Mm.
least for me, working.
Hmm.
And rather than like, I have a hard time with the savior thing and the scapegoat. Like
Hmm.
it's one person cannot possibly save, everyone.
Agreed. Agreed.
And so when I kind of realized, because I felt like I was trying to save people,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really, because there's so many things that were threatened, at the
Well, this
time of
is
my life.
exactly what I say about the world is bigger than your nervous system. It's like
Exactly.
literally, it's so much bigger than your nervous system. So you can't be in all the places. You can only respond to your place. Doesn't mean you don't have
Right.
compassion or you're aware of it, but it's actually the body being in that stress response against multiple things in the world. It immobilizes you. It shuts down the body.
But I also realized it was when I'm thinking of Facebook, like I posted every day, like people, people would always like wanting to know my opinion and wanting to that type of thing. And it just so it just got to the point where I realized this is both fight, because
Mm,
I'm like writing and I'm angry and I'm, and also fun,
mm, mm,
because I wasn't really doing it for me,
mm-hmm,
you know.
absolutely.
Um and yeah, and it was and then I'm looking for feedback from people, and I want people to, we're all on the same team, and
Yeah, yeah.
it just really I got to way too myopic and angry every day, so angry.
Well,
And I think
like what moved you out of that? Because 3 years of that is pretty intense. Like what was the moment or the practice or the thing that helped your body say, oh, he's still present, so year 4 and I'm feeling better. Like tell us that. Because I know a lot of people are thinking, well, what did you do?
I mean, they're not going to like the answer, but I was sitting in our family beach cabin on the Oregon coast, and we can't get internet there.
So your supply
And
was cut off.
so I was reading books, I was day napping, I was going to lunch with my husband. I was, we were just having the greatest time. And after a few days of that, I was like, maybe I should get off Facebook.
Mm,
And like his face, I think his face was very much like that's ever gonna happen. And I did. I I actually I took it off my phone, and then in 2020, we were already working together. In 2020, I was just like, oh, I'm gonna have to watch like a whole other this whole other election, all this whole thing. I'm like, I can't.
mm.
So yeah, I just did like a post like I'm out, and which I didn't need to do.
I had to freeze that because that's important to me because I love when you said I have to watch a whole other election. Because if we think about this experience of you on the coast and you don't
Mhm.
have internet, this was an experience of you attuning to your own reality. You
Right.
weren't right. You weren't attuning to this pain, this anger, this kind of like
Mhm.
mob mentality. You were
Right.
attuning to your own experience, and there was this peace there. And what I love about this is a practical example for people listening is like I'm thinking of the same thing you're saying of I don't have to watch the whole thing again. I remember when the elections were taking place, I voted and then I laid in the bathtub and I just I had all the windows open. I was just kind of really feeling into um I was just feeling into my sense of self. And it was this place of I can't decide what happens here. I made my decision and now I'm just going to enjoy my life until the next thing happens. And it was just this sense of peace instead of watching and waiting and all the tidbits and the Twitter and everyone's discussions and attuning to their experience.
I also think that because we put ourselves in that highly adrenalized state of constantly taking in this information, getting angry, posting your
Hmm.
own thing, getting angry, just like the cycle. It was the first time I just had been out of that. And I think my body actually got to relax for real,
Yes.
and like
Yes.
kind of get that adrenaline out,
Yeah.
actually rest, like actual rest, and not
Hmm.
like picking up my phone when I wake up, and
Hmm.
so it was like, oh, my body's showing me what it is, that what it could be,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not on I mean, I'm not on it anymore. I do Instagram, but now I have kind of more rules around it so that I can just protect my energy. I also realized I was posting in a fawning kind of way because everyone's posting about this huge thing that just happened, another shooting, let's say.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I don't want to see that stuff, and I don't want to post it. I'm going to look at it through my own lens,
Yeah.
but I don't want to be part of this. But if I don't, maybe people will think I don't care about it. Maybe people think
Yes.
I'm trying to bypass like feeling about it. And
Yes.
so then now I'm like posting because I just don't want to look like a jerk, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I'm glad you're saying that because I think
Yeah,
that's what's so interesting to me about social media in particular is I was thinking about this today, how when we post or repost something that's traumatic, you're literally adding another image of trauma to someone's lens, right?
exactly.
And so
Hmm.
when you have someone in a fight or flight response because they read something that really scared or angered them and they want to share it, there's this innocence reflection, innocent reflectiveness of I want to share this and orient, and we all want to agree this is wrong. There's that thing we do,
Yeah,
and simultaneously there's you're actually just contributing to this collective charge of pain,
exactly.
you
And
know.
I look back and see how much I did that. And I
Yeah.
don't, I don't regret it. It's part of the learning process, but
Yeah.
it is hard once I saw it in myself to not see it everywhere else.
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
really had to reorient who I thought, like who I see in my feed every day, like what, because I also don't need to be looking at the same, it's like literally the same post.
Hmm.
Like 40 of my friends will all
Yeah.
post it because it's
Yeah.
like relevant, or you thought it was. And yeah, I just decided, I mean, I still do post some political things, but my rule now is if I'm posting reflexively because I'm angry,
Hmm.
if I'm reposting something that I've seen a few times, in my other friends' stories or feeds, um, yeah, I just go outside instead.
Yeah, I love that. Love
Like
that.
the door to the outside is right next to my desk. So if I come back and I still want to post that, fine. I generally usually don't.
Yeah.
It's usually like, oh, I just got that adrenaline hit, and I'm mad about, this, and it's really more I'm mad about the state of America. And like,
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to solve it with a story on Instagram. You
Right. Well, I
know?
love I love this example because this is another great example of pendulation, right? Where
Mhm,
you're there on the computer, you see something, you get a charge, and instead of contributing and staying in the charge, you pendulate to something more regulating, like outside. And why
mhm,
that's so important for everyone listening is it isn't, again, to deny a situation in the world. It's to literally attune to something of safety in your reality. So your
mhm,
body has the space to then decide, what's my contribution? And then your
mhm,
contribution that day, like sometimes for me, it's literally being kinder to somebody. I go into town and I think, I'm going to be extra slow or open my heart a little more or smile a little extra when it feels right, not fawning, but actually connecting to someone's eyes. And
mhm,
that's my contribution today instead of reposting something painful. So I think it's fun to kind of play with, how can I contribute in a way that's the counter vortex of all this trauma response we're getting.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, and I think that the outside is just the medicine for any screen related issue.
Hmm.
So, which wasn't how I felt before because we didn't live in a place where I could, we could drive to the beach pretty quickly, but
Hmm.
couldn't just step outside and be in like nature. And now I can.
Hmm.
So it's been a very nature is, a healing tool, which has
Yeah.
been really wonderful. The trees here, that's the thing that I love about the Pacific Northwest is we are flush with trees, really good
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that we were going to talk about medical trauma, but we ended up talking about vicarious trauma, the things
Yeah,
that we see through other people.
yeah.
Um, and I think it's going to be great for people listening because I think navigating politics and world events and social media are consistently difficult. And I want to do this is inspiring me to do even a deeper dive just into that practice
Well,
for the
and even just
podcast.
practicing, like, what is it like to expand your capacity to not be on these things?
That's right.
Sometimes it's like what I found helped for so many people was, the first step was I took it off my phone,
Hmm.
and then just see how that feels because you can always add it. You can
Yeah.
always add it back. Just see, and like I do like data, so I was looking at like my data of how much I was on my phone
Hmm.
after I took that stuff out, and it was just like mind blowing. I actually read a book like with
Mm.
words.
Not just a picture, but
Yeah, not just a article online, which is still reading, but it was like, oh, a book,
yeah, I love that.
or I just like do more. I do more things outside, which is honestly nothing, but
Hmm. Yeah.
I like going outside and doing absolutely nothing. But I think that that's contributed more to my healing and being more authentic as a person and being able
Hmm.
to show up for people in this work, more than anything.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
is there anything you want to close us on? Is there any favorite practice or something really interesting you're up to? Or even if you want to talk about what you're going to be doing in the membership, just people have an idea of what your role is in that container. It's up to you, whatever you want to
oh,
talk about.
sure. And the membership for membership peeps and future membership people. I think on Fridays I'm gonna be hosting um just a dance battle. No, I'm kidding. That would be cool though.
Karaoke. I thought it was
Yeah,
karaoke.
it'll be. I'm still very unclear on that. I think of it as a defrosting, right?
Mm,
Like
hmm.
we're going to be doing like 90 minutes or so of getting together and doing the things that we've either been putting off, the things that we know we need to do, bills, all my writers out there,
Hmm.
writing. I've been working on, the closer I get to the end of this project I'm working on, the less I work on it. you know
Understood. Understood.
Yep, yep. And so, or meal prep or meditation, or like, it could be exercise, like it could really be anything, but just holding space for doing those things that we don't necessarily love doing or that we really do love doing, we just don't have time for,
Hmm.
together, collectively, over Zoom, but still,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fun. And I think it'll just be nice to know that on a Friday, you could get some stuff done that you've been avoiding, and it could be a little fun and with some friends, you know.
I think it's brilliant because I remember in college and in high school, but especially in college, that was my favorite thing where we'd all kind of pile in 10 of us or so into my friend's house. We would just work on our artwork or our homework together. And this co-regulation of just kind of not even talking, but kind of parallel working or studying, it was so settling. So when you
Yeah.
said, let's all get together and do the thing we don't want to do all week together, I was like, this is brilliant. This is a great way to move through freeze. So I can't wait to do those. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun, and I am excited for some kind of dance party.
We have to do we have to do karaoke. I'm
Karaoke.
so wanting to because all we need to do is get share screen, play the
Mhm.
song, and then the
Yeah.
person sings. It's not that difficult. Barring technical difficulty.
I'm like, it's not that difficult, I guess. With we could have an aid, which in my mind would be coffee or vodka.
On that
Mhm.
note, we're gonna close. And you'll hear much more from Marika in the coming months because her and Camille are going to be joining me more on the podcast. But thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you.